I now have the pleasure of introducing our next speaker, Janina Madoff. After 15 years as a lab engineer in medical device and bionics research, she transitioned to data analytics. In this field, she focused more on visualization and at some time directly supported patient care. She's been in healthcare data analytics at Endeavor, formerly North Shore, for 6 years. In all careers, she found visuals a straightforward and impactful way to drive actionable insight, especially for complex data. Take it away.
Thank you. It's going to be a tough act to follow, so bear with me, please. I'm going to speak on a user-friendly visual of future hospital volume for staff optimization. I was speaking to an ER manager on January 29th of 2020, and she said to me, if I could only have a warning by 2 p.m. that there will be a surge of patients the next day, I would find nurses ahead of time. Besides the date, I'm sure you understand why I didn't end up following up with this meeting. Why was I speaking to an ER manager? I am a data analyst at the Endeavor Health System in Northern Illinois. And my job is to work with a team, and we design models, we build reports, and communicate with medical leads and physicians, and we compose information taken from the electronic health record data, the EHR system. Those data are all created from interactions between nurses and doctors and care managers when they're interacting with patients. And in turn, medical leads interact with the nurses and doctors on the floor. The challenge we were given is that the nurses were struggling to find places for their patients. If there's no room for them to put their patients, they can't effectively care for their patients. We as data analysts are limited. We don't have the extensive toolkit available that a lot of industries do because we are very limited for patient security purposes. We have only used tools that are acceptable to our EHR. A lot of our models and visualizations are all homegrown, and we are a nonprofit institution. We also have to make sure that what we're sharing with our ER leads and medical professionals are very compact and easily digestible. They don't have time to look for complicated reports. So we solved the problem by closing the loop with a single color code to let them know what kind of capacity or volume issues they may have in the upcoming future. This is a description or an example of what they were dealing with. Let's say on Monday, you have enough nurses to handle the patients that are currently in the ER or patients that are arriving by ambulance. On Tuesday, however, if you haven't gotten the patients all moved through the system, your nurses could get overwhelmed. So in an ideal world, we could give them a warning on Sunday, then on Tuesday, the hospital will be overwhelmed. So then on Monday, they can upstaff, have enough nurses to handle the patients, move them through the system, have fewer patients in the hospital on Tuesday, and then the nurses won't get overwhelmed. What does electronic health record data look like? You've all seen this. Everybody's been to the doctor. A lot of the data they get can be very complicated. The nurses are looking at ER track boards, tracking where patients are going, what vitals they have, what tests they need to take. There's a lot of timestamps related to every single thing, including when was an appointment canceled, when did a patient get a line put in, what kind of tests they have. A lot of the patient info that we have is also very complex and long-form story about where they've been, where they're going, what their chronic diseases are, and what to watch out for, allergies and things like that. How do we integrate one single color code alert into all those activities? They're constantly getting blinked by color codes. We've all heard code blue and code red. So we disseminated our hospital volume into 3 colors, a green, orange, or red warning, and it lands directly in their email or their in-basket message, which is their messaging system inside the hospital medical, the EHR that they're already using. And if they want more detail, they can follow through a link. This is what the warning looks like. The most important part is that red color. It says, hey, your hospital's going to be overwhelmed. Be aware. But if they have time and if they need more information about exactly when today or more information about the future, we have built this model, which is a future forecast of hospital volume. Following the curve, you can see the link, the timestamp on the top right at 4 a.m. This is an actual alert view that they had. The hospital peak volume was going to occur at 4 a.m. that day. However, if they needed more information about the future, they look at the two curves on the bottom. The top curve is our hospital system, and the bottom curve is the hospital of choice that they want to look into. The blue dots are every hour of hospital volume that has already occurred. For instance, that might be 98% capacity, those numbers over there. And the red is what will occur in the future up to 2 to 3 days ahead. So the way the doctors are now using this is that on times of lulls, when there's sort of calm in the ER, they check ahead to see when capacity might be up in the next 2 days, and they can upstaff, see if they can get patients moving through the hospital. Or on days when it's really crowded, that they can look ahead to see when there might be a reprieve, and they can figure out when their nurses might have some downtime. The top tiles are all about patients moving through the hospital, and it's not going to equal to it's not going to sum up because there are patients who are staying in the hospital system. What I heard from our EHR lead, he said that this is an incredibly powerful tool to accurately predict hospital capacity 2 to 3 days into the future. At a time when capacity is limited and the current mitigation efforts are reactive, this allows us to have a more proactive approach. And for just to zoom in, what I looked at on the 17th, I wanted to see how close the prediction was. So I checked, the 4 a.m. was at 98%. It was predicted on the 17th. I looked ahead to Saturday when things started to calm down, which turned out to be true. But on the 18th, I checked back, and it turns out the peak happened at 6 a.m., was only 2 hours off and 1% off, which was pretty close. This is how the model is built for us data nerds here. It's a seasonal trend decomposition based on OS. Those are 6 months worth of hourly data. The input data is the 6 months hourly data, and those 3 curves in the middle in the red box are periodicity we expect to see in there. So that of the 3 curves, the top one is 1 day, the middle one is 1 week, and the bottom one is 1 month. And those are periodicities that we actually did find in the data, and the combination of those 3 middle curves are what showed you the curve from before. I want to thank our team, especially Loretta Au, the data scientist who built the model, and Chad Konchak, who is our AVP who put this all together. Thank you.
You don't get to leave that easily. You have some time for questions. So do we have any questions for Janina? All right. Oh, a lot of people popped up. All right, go ahead, you.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. It's very interesting to learn more about the healthcare data. My question is, so for the dashboard, who are the users of the dashboard? Are these the nurses? Sounds like from what you said before, the dashboard would be the most useful for people who are making the decisions for who's coming to the hospital, like the staffing. And so I wonder, how do you think about who's using the dashboard and what kind of information they're getting, and what is the impact for
Great question.
this?
So this is
Make sure you, yes. And the question is around how do you think about who's using the dashboard, really around your audience, knowing your audience?
I love this question because as data analysts, when you create visuals, you don't want to just send it off into the ether and hope somebody clicks on it. So this was actually built on May 21st of 2021, and it was sort of sitting around. And I think our data scientists did a brilliant job forecasting actual future volume. So I've been in contact and reaching out to the users. And generally, we have a site that is the Capacity Management Center, and they do a lot of like the airport, what do they call it? The airport control of like patients moving through the system, and also the ER managers who are figuring out when to upstaff, and the doctors who are running the ER are our primary consumers. And they don't have time for a lot of detail, and this helps them figure out when to upstaff and where to move around nurses, because they don't just stay in one hospital. So it is primarily the managers of the ER and the physicians who are running. But the email goes out to a lot of people so they can just get the bullet point of, hey, high capacity, watch out.
Okay, we have time for one more question. I'll throw it over, unless they're virtual. Oh, we have. Okay. All right, so go ahead and ask your question.
The prediction interval, I would assume that the shaded area is related to the prediction interval.
Yeah, that was the confidence interval.
Gotcha. Okay. This is kind of reminding me of the code, like the hurricane prediction. And I was wondering if you've heard about this literature on studying uncertainty visualization and how they've shown that people might interpret just like how they might interpret the hurricane prediction in the sense that, oh, if I'm in the shaded area, maybe I should evacuate. But if I'm very close to the shaded area, but I'm not in the shaded area, then maybe I'm safe. So I was wondering if you thought about maybe mapping into different visual forms, given that having like a shaded area and, you know, the area being filled out might have some different, it might be encouraging to different ways of interpreting uncertainty information.
So the question is around uncertainty in the data, and does your process include, or have you thought about visualizing it in different ways or forms so that way you can have an understanding of what's happening?
So it's interesting that you mentioned that, because the discussion was our team wanted to remove that confidence interval because it was so broad and it was a confusing source. So I couldn't speak to the actual math behind it, but I can say that we do warn them that only 2 to 3 days ahead of time is really reliable. And the confidence interval visual that you see is really meant to say, hang on, we're doing our best. Don't go too far in the future. So it might be that we'll just remove the confidence interval in the future if it does provide confusion, but any more information I can connect you with our data scientist.
All right, great. Thank you so much.